Thanks, Michael. You're going to deviate my attention if we start talking about motorcycles. Firstly, thank you for all of you for being here and staying to the end. And those in the front row, you do have the right to heckle since you've stayed right to the end. I do have a slide presentation. It was there, and it all of a sudden disappeared. If I could get it back, please. Yeah, but no, because that's not my presentation. There we go. That's it. That's it. That's not me. I can't do that. And I will talk about digitalization and wonderful technology, and sometimes it works and sometimes it does not. There we go. And if I could get the next slide going. Ooh, that's a slow-mo. Road transport goes much more quickly than that normally. Wow, that's...
Is it yours?
That is, it is. You know what? Let's just stop the presentation. I'll just speak. What I was going to show was an old map of the Black Sea and Balkan region. And when I look at such an old map, it makes me think of something that happened 8,500 years ago. And I have to say this because, yes, as Michael said, I am Canadian. And so I just like to remind people, when you look at the Black Sea, it used to be the Black Sea, pre-Black Sea, it used to be a big basin. 8,500 years ago, there was global warming, and we can discuss this over dinner, otherwise I'll have the entire speech about this. And what happened is there was a giant lake underneath a massive wall of ice. And 8,500 years ago, the temperature went up in a few decades 5 degrees. The ice started to melt, and this massive swell of water came across, separated the UK from continental Europe, continued down the Mediterranean, broke the Bosphorus Sill, and guess what? It filled up the Black Sea. So the Black Sea water is Canadian, just saying. But we can discuss this more over dinner. But what is fundamental in all of this is, over the millennia, the Balkans and Black Sea region have been trade routes. They've been crossroads. We've seen civilizations come through here. It was very much part of the old Silk Road. It all came through this region. And this is wonderful, but what is clear is that roads, as Michael indicated, are an important part. Basically, you can't have intermodal transport without a beginning or end, and the beginning and the end is always road transport. At some point, you will have something in modern age on a truck, and which makes it that our systems, our transport systems, can be more flexible, more resilient in terms of difficulties. My next slide I would have shown was a bunch of trucks. No, let's not try. let's really not try. I don't think, unless the slides are going really fast. Oh, they are now. Oh, here we go. The next slide, which I wanted to show. Thank you very much to whoever the IT genius is. We had COVID for too long, and maybe we can discuss the impacts of that afterwards. But we had the war in Ukraine. So after COVID and all the disruption it caused, the last thing we were expecting was we would then have a war in this region, which would then even further disrupt everything. What I was most proud of as Secretary General of the RU was how quickly our members responded to the crisis and to the war. We sent immediately trucks with aid. We sent buses and coaches that helped actually move 7 million refugees out of Ukraine and distributed them throughout Europe and other places. And this was even before the UNA was able to jump in and do something. But because of this war, we now have partnerships with the UN, HCR, with the Red Cross, and bringing aid and helping people get out. And we said, anytime there's another conflict, work with us directly. Give us a call. We're the guys on the road who get the job done. Now, the war has also affected the entire region, whether it be because of the conflict itself, because of sanctions. So trade routes have completely changed. We had to think that Ukraine was one of the main passageways to the CIS countries, and all of a sudden you just can't go through there. So how do you get goods around? Greece has had a huge role to play in this in terms of absorbing the traffic. Turkey as well, just to give the Turkey as an example. In 2022, the transit increased by 47% through Turkey, which is massive in terms of such an increase. Of course, what that means is, as you see here, the impact on the borders is tremendous. if I had an aerial view, you would have to actually see the real impact. Here we just see a bunch of trucks together. I would have to have an aerial view or even a satellite shot to get the real impact. We did have some governments who responded in Turkey, Bulgaria, and Georgia. They said, let's increase the capacity, but it's peanuts compared to what is required in terms of the increase in volumes. We used to have and complain about waiting times at certain border crossings, you know it extremely well, which one I'm referring to, of 1 to 2 days to get from one side to the other. In some parts of the BSEC region, we saw waiting times to get from one side to the other, and this is not an exaggeration, 40 to 50 days, 40 hyphen to 50 days to get from one side to another. I'm sorry, we're approaching 2023. This is unacceptable. When we see that we have waiting times with Ukraine at the border crossing of 40 kilometers, and that's where you need a shot from the sky to see what does 40 kilometers represent. Just imagine in your minds a place that you know that is 40 kilometers away, and imagine from this point to that 40 kilometers away lined with trucks. And then we have the audacity within this audience and other audiences to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. I say to you, are you kidding me? Sustainable development in terms of economic development, you have a truck that is blocked at the border. It's not the truck that's blocked, it's the economy that's blocked. The economy is not moving. You have a driver that's held hostage in there. So how can we talk about social equity? And then in terms of environmental protection, the drivers have to keep the trucks running. Why? Because they can't lose their spot in the line. So the trucks are running, burning fuel for nothing, just to advance inches at a time. But we talk about Sustainable Development Goals. And all of this, much of it because of completely unacceptable procedures. Our trucks go to the borders, and what you're hearing now is reality. I'm not talking about high-level stuff where the road transport guys, our feet are on the ground. We talk about what happens on the ground. Our trucks get sprayed with water, claiming that it's a disinfectant. Really? Like, we really need disinfectant to get through a border? We do an X-ray on one side, and guess what? They do an X-ray on the other side, too. We have this fantastic technology called email and digital solutions. Why don't we just exchange the pictures? The truck is weight on one side and then weight on the other side. Do they actually think when it goes through the border it's going to change the weight? I mean, all these ridiculous procedures that are put in place that just exacerbate the situation. Plus, add to that we don't have secure parking areas. So when you have all these waiting times, you'd say, oh, fantastic, then our drivers can wait very, very comfortably in secure parking areas. Not the case. They don't exist in most places. Some have built them. Most places have not. And add to that the refugee crisis, where we have refugees trying to jump onto to the trucks, and so on and so on. And then one of our biggest crises in the road transport industry is driver shortage, which we discussed at the Women's Forum, and saying, how can we get women to come into the profession? But how can I get a woman to come into the profession when I say you're going to wait at the border for 40 days with a whole bunch of guys and in no secure conditions? In the EU alone, by 2026, we will have 2 million drivers shortage. We will need 2 million drivers just to drive the economy. So, I mean, or we wake up and smell the coffee that this is the real issue that we have to address, or we'll be in huge problems. With the EU, we've written to the President of the Commission, van der Leyen, basically saying, you have this thing called the TIER Convention, the United Nations Convention that actually helped create the European Union. After the Second World War, the IRU created it, and it then became a UN convention to allow people and countries that didn't trust each other. Post-World War II, not many countries trusted each other. But with the tier system, we allowed security and therefore trade to happen with trust. We're in the same situation now with the war in Ukraine. People don't necessarily trust whatever truck and whatever the content of the truck is coming through. And so what we said is, use this tried and tested instrument, give a priority green lane for the traffic using tier, and let's stop this nonsense where we have 40-kilometer queues. Give priority to tier traffic. You receive in advance all the pre-declaration of what we're moving, so we should be able to move this quite quickly. Another thing we need to work on is intermodality. Again, as I said at the beginning and the end, you'll have road transport. So let's make these links work. Whether it's road, rail, road, sea, everything will start and end by road, so let's make that partnership work. What's required in this is that we have better digitalization. I'll say a few more words on that in a moment. And then we also then have priority lanes. Again, if we have containers coming from China, and China is a signatory to the Tier Convention, let's make it a tier container so that once it arrives in the port, it can quickly get onto a truck and go to its final destination securely. What we also need is infrastructure. I normally say that we in the road transport industry appreciate every millimeter of infrastructure that's built. And will never complain when it is built. But what's most important are the soft procedures. I change my argument when it comes to border crossings because we are facing a situation of border crossings where we do need more infrastructure. We need to have the space for a dedicated lane. So if I'm sending you information in advance, you have a place where my truck can go and get through very quickly. But that also means that the two sides need to talk to each other, that the processes are done together, the investments are done together so that we actually speak to each other and we start doing the no-brainer solutions instead of making everything always so complex. Digitalization itself. We talk about the future, we talk about autonomous vehicles. They will come, guarantee you they will come. But how can we have autonomous vehicles and we're still carrying paper? Imagine you do transport and say, oh, but wait a minute, I still have my CMR, or I have my bill of lading, or I have a tier carnet, paper. I mean, are you kidding? It should all be digital. I once was downstairs at the RU where we had 10 million carnets stored. And I said, all the information we have in these carnets would fit on my iPhone. Why do we have all this paper? My sons look at me, who are 22 and 24, saying, why do you have so much paper? Stop, stop, use digital means. By doing this, we can increase our processes and streamline our processes. The IRU has spent hundreds, listen to what I'm saying, hundreds of millions of dollars to implement a system whereby we can communicate to customs saying, this is who we are, this is where we're going, this is who I am, I've done this before, this is our truck number, this is my driver, everything in advance. So if there's a problem, the customs can say, please pull over, we have an issue with this. If there's no issue, let them go. And if we're thinking of the future, it must be digital. If you want security, it must be digital. And that's the whole purpose of e-tier. But we have this funny thing called eCMR. If I'm going to do a contract of carriage, you need a CMR consignment note before I even do a transport. So you want me to move something, and I'll send it to Michael. Well, we have to sign a contract where I will move the goods for you. You're the shipper, you're the receiver, I'm the transporter. I sign a contract. It can be digital. There's this thing called the eCMR protocol. Let me just get these figures right. In the Balkan states, 70% of the governments have not signed, 70%, 70, have not signed the eCMR protocol. In the BSEC region, the majority of BSEC states have not signed the protocol. Greece has not signed the protocol, okay? What are simple things? Sign the agreement saying I agree to the digitalization of the CMR consignment note. No, we're still waiting. And yet governments look to us and say, why don't you digitalize more quickly? Why don't you sign the document to allow us to digitalize? I mean, it's chicken and egg, but it's ridiculous. And I'm just talking about e-tier eCMR. What about e-visas, e-permits, e-everything? Everything should be on our phone. Every transport I do should be able to have everything on my phone to be able to get it done. Turkey, our first pilot with e-tier, and I say this so you can hear this because it's a fantastic story. In 2016, we did an e-tier pilot between Turkey and Iran. And people said, why with Iran? I said, because if we can do it between Turkey and Iran, we can do it anywhere in the world. And yet, e-tier in this part of the world, okay, isn't working. So again, how can it work with Iran? And we did it successfully in 2016, and here we're still dragging our feet. Just saying. And with that, I know I've taken way too long. And just to say that there are challenges. We need to rebuild. We'll need to rebuild better. But more importantly, we need to rebuild smart. Just put our heads together. Two brains are always better than one. And imagine we get in a group like this and we can actually put our heads together. And I tell you, we can find the no-brainer solutions very, very quickly. There are low-lying hanging fruits. And in everything we do, it's just a matter of common sense, step by step. And practically speaking, we'll get it done. Sorry for the time I took. Thank you for your attention. And thank you for not heckling.